Hello and welcome to Pins and Patience. My name is Jeremy. Today we're going to be talking about the Nemesis / DS9 era duty shirt. We all can recognize this as being the color of operations. This is a t-shirt fabric. I'm going to call it a jersey here. And I have my pattern cut out. I've taken the time to take all of my paper patterns and cut them out, stitch them into muslin cloth so that I can just simply lay it out. It's a heck of a lot easier than having to deal with paper patterns. So I've taken this. This is the back to the shirt, and I've put this on the fold of this cloth. Yeah, I've also taken the division shirt collar, and this is also on the fold. Now, what I discovered about the division shirt collar with this pattern is that I find that it's a little short for most necks. So I'm going to be extending the seam allowance by 1/2 inch. We have a seam allowance here of 3/8 of an inch, so I'm going to be extending it by 1/2 inch. So hopefully that'll give me a little more room, and it won't sit so low on the neck of the person who's going to wear this. So I'm going to do some cutting, and then after that, we're going to go to the next piece. There we have it. Now, what's going to be great is that this length of cloth that came from the remainder, this is now going to become one of the folds that's going to be part of the zipper program. So that, or pardon me, the part of the zipper construction. And so this is pretty much the perfect length, and then I'll just trim this down accordingly for what I need, and I'll certainly talk about that later. Now, I try very hard to make sure that I use as much or as little fabric as I possibly can because a lot of these colors are extremely hard to find. So at this point in time, as you can see, I've got my division shirt front laid out here again. This is on the fold or where the fold will be, and I have some extra here and then a little bit over here, but here's the thing. I'd certainly like to try to get more out of this cloth for the lengths that I can. Now, as it stands, I'm going along essentially the width way, the bolt length here, and this rounds out to be approximately 41.5 inches going this way. So I'm going to fold the fabric in a different direction, and I'm going to see if I can get both the duty shirt and the sleeve all in one by folding it the other way. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but at least we'll know that we've tried. Now, as you can see, I did change the fold here. Now I've got it folded lengthways, and absolutely, again, placing the shirt front on the fold. I do have a whole lot over here, and I'm just going to show you how much more I have. Now, as you can see, I've been able over here, so this is the cloth folded up, this is the duty shirt over here, and I still have a lot of cloth left to do this one sleeve. Therein lies the problem. I always choose to do the sleeves on the fold because, again, there isn't as much cloth waste. So it's tough. I guess really it all depends to you as to what you want to do and how you want to do this, because as you can see, I still have a good probably 12 inches of cloth left over up here. So I'll have extra to work with, but I don't want to have a bunch of extra. So I'm going to have to figure out what it is, whether I'm going to continue having it this way or else I'm going to fold the cloth once again, selvage edge to selvage edge. But I'm going to do some stuff off camera, and then I'll get back to you. Welcome back. Now, off camera, I did a bunch of measuring and I did some math, and it turned out that the best way for me to do this is going to fold the cloth selvage edge to selvage edge. Now, as you can see, I have laid out the cloth a little bit here. I've taken some time, and the duty shirt here is going to fit exactly as what I need it. I've got the seam allowance Actually, I don't have much of a seam allowance. I've got the edge down here, right along the edge of the cloth over here. Again, I don't have much cloth over here because I don't want to have a bunch of waste. But what's going to be good is that from this area up here, and I'm going to be able to cut out my wrist cuffs, and so that'll be good. And then the next one I'm going to have to deal with is cutting the sleeves. So I'm going to get into it. Now I know what you're thinking, Jeremy, you've got a bunch of waste here. You're right, there is going to be some waste, but I am doing my very best to minimize it. Now with this amount of fabric remaining, I can absolutely just go with it this way, but again, I want to try to mitigate as much waste as possible. So one thing that's nice about the sleeve cuffs is that I don't have to worry about putting these on a fold. So that's going to be great. Now, the thing about the sleeve cuffs is that, of course, the longer you make it, the bigger the cuff is going to be. And as it stands, the pattern has a nice fitted cuff for the shirts. Now, if your customer or you have got one of those big beefy wrists or forearms, you may want to extend the length of the sleeve cuff a bit more just to give yourself a little bit more room in that wrist. Moving on with the shirt sleeve, as you can see here, I've done my very best to mitigate as much waste as I possibly can. So I've taken the straight edge of the fold here of the shirt, and I've done as much as I think I can to bring it as close to the edge here as I think is safe to make sure I have a proper seam allowance as I use this. And then from this side, I'm just simply going to do a straight cut coming along this way, which I will then again do. I'll do a flip over of the cloth going this way, fold it again, and then cut out my other sleeve. Now, I could take this sleeve and fold it out, and I'll show you. Now, personally, I think the amount of surface area that this sleeve curve takes up is a lot of waste just because of its size, the curvature. Um, and yeah, I know you're hearing in this video waste, waste, waste. Like I said, this color is all this fabric of this color is all I have left, and it was super hard to find. So I'm going to do some cutting. I'm going to cut out this sleeve. We'll cut out the next one, and then we're going to do some trim cutting and then some zipper facing cutting. And there we have it. We have one sleeve cut out. So that process that you just witnessed, I'm going to do a second time off camera. Then we're going to do a couple more cuts, and then hopefully we'll get to the machine. We've done all of our cutting. We're moving forward now. Everything that you see here laid out on the mat is exactly what you're going to need to make the DS9 Nemesis era duty shirt. We have our back, we have our front, we have our neck here, which is on the fold with extra there in case we need it. Our sleeve cuffs as well, with a little extra if we need it for those people with very large forearms or large wrists. We can deal with that. And then we have our two sleeves. So out of all that cutting, all that measuring, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces to make this shirt. Now, the next thing that we are going to do is we're going to be cutting some trim, and the trim is going to go on the shirts. And however you do it, I'm not quite sure, but what I do in this stage, I finish the bottom of the edges of the shirt first, so that when I do sew them on the sides and sew the front and the back together, um, I'm going to have a very clean and tidy trim at the bottom and cover off all of these edges here. So that's what I do. I'm going to do that after I do all the cutting, and then after that, we're going to go to the machine. Welcome back. We're going to start working on the body of the shirt here. And I'm going to, as I said, I was going to be working on some trim. Uh, so this is 23 inches wide. And as I do the trim, I always like to have about a ½ inch on either side. So I'm going to cut my trim length to be 24 inches long. Now, before I do that, I am going to square this part off. As you can see, I've got quite a bit of a ragged edge, and I like having things pretty even. Now, this piece of cloth here, this is going to be the trim body. And once again, I'm going to trim this out, or I'm going to cut this out, make sure it's good and even, and I'm going to be cutting this at 1 and here's why. So as it stands, these two pieces of fabric together, as I've measured them off camera, is already an eighth of an inch. So we have this together, so we have an eighth of an inch, and then we're going to fold this over again. Well, now we've also got another eighth of an inch. So now we have 1/8, 2/8, and then we're going to fold it over one more time, 3/8 of an inch, plus then we're going to have to do that again. So all of that is going to give me lots of room so that when I stitch in the ditch, when I do stitch in the ditch, my stitches are going to be able to catch the bottom edge of this trim. Now, because it's jersey, the remaining stuff isn't going to fray, and if it does fray, it's on the inside of the shirt. So I'm going to get to cutting. The thing about jersey cloth as you're working with it is that you're going to find it'll curl in onto itself. So a few moments ago, you saw me struggling with the curl going one way. So in this case, I just folded it in the other direction, and now we have this nice even flat part that we're not going to have to struggle with. So I'm going to trim off these uneven sides, and I'm going to make things nice and square. All the cutting is done, all the measuring is done, and as I said, if we look at it, here's our trim edges, and they're exactly the amount that we need. Of course, now we're going to go to the machine, um, and then we're going to run some stitches along here. And off camera, I am going to do the exact same thing for the back. So the process that I do here is going to be the exact same thing for the back, and then we'll marry them up. We're back here at the board. We've done a little bit of cutting. We've got our pins going here. And of course, as always, it wouldn't be pins and patience unless I did some pinning. There we have it. We have all our pins going here. We've got them in our sewing direction line. Always important to do that. Even as important is to make sure that your pins are as close to the bottom as possible, giving you as much room to work with your sewing foot. Now we're going to go to the machine. Now with my machine, I have a Skyline S9, and my ability with this machine is to have two different stitch plates. This one currently is the straight stitch, and I also have a zigzag stitch plate. I find that when I'm working with uh, shirting materials, especially jersey, almost at any speed at the very beginning, the edge of the shirt gets caught into the zigzag hole on the stitch plate. So I'm using that straight stitch. I'm using a walking foot, and my needle is a Jersey needle. It's an 80 gauge, and it's by Schmetz. So I'm gonna go cover off our seam allowance at 3/8 of an inch. We're gonna drop our first stitch. We're gonna lock that stitch in. Adjusting our speed, and away we go. There we have it, some amazing stitches going through. Only had a couple minor corrections going on. As you can see, this here is this is designed to be a 1/4 inch foot. So when I have it on that 3/8, it gives me that little bit. But unfortunately, when you get too close to a needle at some time, or a pin, pardon me, you'll notice the fabric did jut out a little bit, so I had to correct it there. All right, time to go to the ironing board. And we are back from the ironing board. Okay, as you can see here, I've taken the time. I have my trim. I've did my sewing here. I've then folded it over. I pressed it. I folded it over one more time on the opposite side, pressed it, and now that gives me a whole lot, well, not a whole lot, but that does give me the appropriate amount of cloth so that I can catch my stitch to stitch in the ditch. Now, I've gone through here and I've changed my feet. Now, hopefully you're going to be able to see this. I may move the camera to the other side. So this is my zipper foot, and of course it's got 3 positions, center, right, and left. There we are. So now we are set and sorted. I'm just going to set my machine so that I can use my zipper foot properly. We are going to go to 1/4 inch. No, we're going to go on the outside. So we're going to go on the left-hand side of the foot. As you can see, there's the needle there. And it's going to go hopefully right into that ditch. And the reason why I'm putting the foot along the trim body here is that when the foot presses down, I don't want the fabric to roll in onto itself. So I want to be able to actually push the fabric away from the bottom edge here. Okay, so let's drop our first stitch. Now I think we have a really, really great line here. Everything is very even. I'm going to be happy, I think, because when I flip this over, we're going to be able to take a look and see if we caught everything we wanted to catch. And lo and behold, look at that, we did. And we had a little bit extra, which is fine. You know, when you're having to stitch in the ditch with some things, you know, it's going to move on you, fabric's going to move a little bit, but give yourself a little bit extra. And yeah, I'm really happy with the results here. So I'm going to duplicate this on another side. I'm going to do that off camera, and then we're going to work on to something else. Stay tuned.